Hello everyone and welcome to this video. My name is Foad Alavi and today I'm going to show you how to authenticate your web API using .NET Identity, JSON Web Token, and Entity Framework. Then stay tuned. We have an empty API application here. First, I'm going to create a model for something like employee, and I'm just giving some property to it. In this video, we are not going to use this model. I'm just going to create entity framework migration for this model and the identity model that we have. How? By adding some dependencies. Let me select entity framework. I need to install entity framework core. And then I need to install entity framework core design. Let's select version 6 and install it. And after that, because we are going to use SQL Server engine, I'm going to install Entity Framework for SQL Server and install it. Because I'm going to create identity database, I need to have Asp Net Core Identity. I need to install ASP Core Identity and ASP Core Identity Entity Framework. Let's go back to the project, build everything, and create the context. I'm going to create a contexts, and I'm going to call it Auth Demo DB context. Let's create that one and inherit from, instead of inheriting from DB context, I'm going to inherit from identity DB context, which is an implementation of DB context, which has some other tables in it. Identity DB context. And we need to create the constructor for that and pass DB context options. I'm going to call it option and pass it to the base method as well. And now I'm just going to create a property for DB set that I have for employee. And call it employee. Fine, everything is ready. I'm going to use .NET CLI to create the migration. For doing that, I need to go to my CMD and check if I have it installed or not using .NET tool list.g, because I usually install these kind of tools globally. I don't have it, then I need to install it. I'm going to install .NET Entity Framework as a global tool. And this is the command. Great, let's build our application. Go to the PowerShell. And this is the address that I have for this project. Fine. And I'm going to create a migration. And the command is .NET EF migration add initial. Initial is the name. It's a convention. By convention, we give it to that. It is going to create a folder here for me, as you know. If it works. No, it is not working. Why? Because it is telling me that it cannot create the object. Why? Because we don't specify the connection string. Let's create the connection string. I have the connection string here. Connection string in the app setting. We have one connection string and then default connection string. It is going to connect to the local DB, database out DB, and trusted connection should be true, and multiple active result set should be true as well. In the program, I'm going to inject it by builder and pass the name, which is Auth Demo DB context. And we have some options for that. We are going to tell it that we are going to use SQL Server and give the connection string to that using builder.configuration.getSection. And then the name that I have, which is connection strings, and after that default connection string. And I want the value of this section. I need a semicolon here and another one here. Fine, let's go back to the developer PowerShell and create the initial. The initial migration should be placed here. Fine. As you can see, it is going to create ASP.NET rules, ASP.NET users, and some other tables which are related to our identity framework. Let's update the database and let's refresh it, open it. As you can see, I have employee here, I have migration table here, and we have some other tables for ASP.NET Identity. Fine, ASP.NET Identity is responsible for creating users, managing users, login, logout, and managing the claims. We are going to first create a user and login. For doing that, I'm going to create a controller and call it out controller. Let's create it like that. Add a controller, API controller, empty, and call it out controller. I'm going to create a login method first. It should be public async task. I'm not sure what I'm going to return. Just let's stick to the task and login. And it should be HTTP get. Where is get? Here. Fine. And what we are going to pass it? We are going to pass it a username and password for logging in. Then inside the model, I'm going to create login model or maybe login user. And it will have just a username and a password. Let's go back to my controller. Login user, I'm going to call it user. But before logging in a user, first we need to create a user. Then let's create another method. I'm just doing Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V. HTTP post. Yes, I'm going to register a user. I guess I'm going to return a Boolean. I'm not sure. Let's stick to the Boolean for now. And we are going to register a user. For doing that, I'm going to create a service. Services and out service. In out service, I am going to create a method for registering a user using public async task, and I'm going to create it as bool register user. This method accepts a login user. Let's call it user. And how to create a user. For creating a user, we need to use a class called user manager, and we need to tell the identity what implementation of user we are going to pass to that. Then we are going to create a constructor and passing identity user. Let's do it. ctor tab. User manager identity user, and I'm going to call it user manager. Let's create a field for that one, but how we are going to inject it here? Let's go back to the program.cs file, .services.add identity. Inside the identity, we need to pass two types. First for our user and then for roles. Identity user and identity roles. We can pass some options to it, for example, options. And in the options, we can say things like options.password, as an example, required unique character, requires non-alphabetic, required length, and let's have it length should be at least 5. And then we are going to tell it that this identity is going to use my entity framework and my DB context. We need to pass the DB context to it. Add entity framework store, and it is out demo DB context. Fine. And then we are going to tell it what kind of token we are going to use, and I'm going to ask it to use the default token provider. Let me press a tab here to make them more readable. Here in the out services, I have a login user. It is time to create an identity user out of that. Var identity user equal new identity user. And I'm going to just pass username equal user.username, and email is equal user.username. Fine, we are not going to password to it. Why? Because we are going to create the user and let my user manager to hash the password and store it in the database in a secure way. How? By using user manager dot create async, and I'm going to pass my identity user to it, and then it accepts the password, which is user dot password. It is coming from our model, and because it is async, I need to await it first, and I'm going to put the result in var result. Let me check what it is returning. It is returning the identity result. And what is inside the identity result? Error succeeded. Okay, I'm going to return this one, which means that if the user is created successfully, it is going to return true. Otherwise, it is going to return false. Fine. Let's build the application and be sure that it is running. We have an issue here. Here we have register user, but it is not returning anything. Fine. I need to create a constructor and inject our out services here. But for injecting out services, we need to create an interface. How can we do that? Just go to the class, click control period, or just click on this brush and extract interface. Select the members that you want to extract and click on OK. It is going to create IOut services exactly in the place that you have the class. Let's go back to the controller now. I'm going to inject IOut service, and I'm going to call it out service. And let's create a field for that, and create a field for me, and then return await out service dot register user, and I'm just passing the user to it. Let's run the application and see what will happen using .NET run. It is running. Let's open our Swagger. We have out for get and post. For the post is for creating a user. I'm going to call it test@gmail.com, and for the password I'm going to use password. Let's execute it and see. Oh, we have some issues. Let's check what we forgot. It says that we have one service here which is not registered, which is correct. Let's go back to the services. Here I need to register this service using builder.services.addTransient. IOut service should be returning out service when we inject it. Fine, let's build the application again and run it. And go back to Swagger and just execute it once more. Now it is returning true, which means that our user with username test@gmail.com and with this password is generated. Let's go back to the database and validate that. Here, if I just open ASP.NET users, I can see that this user is generated for me. Fine, let's go back and implement the login. Let's close everything, go to the controller, and I'm going to just await out service.login the user. We don't have any implementation for that. Let's create one, generate method login. Fine, we have login here. Let's go back to the service. And in the service, it will start nagging that you don't implement the interface completely. Let's implement that. Let's move it down and add a sync here. I'm not sure what I'm going to return. Let's stick to the task for now. In ASP.NET Identity, first you need to get the user from database, and after that check the password, because you don't know how ASP.NET Identity is going to hash the password and store it. Then you cannot even compare it. You need to pass everything to it, trust it, and just get the result. Let's get the identity user first, where identity user is equal user manager dot find user by email async. And let's pass the email. Come on, why it is like that? Let's pass the email, which is user.username. And for login, I'm going to check if what we are receiving is null or not. Then if identity user is null, just return false. Okay, now I know that I'm going to return bool, and let's just click on this one and pull login up, which means that it is going to create this method for me in the interface. Yes, and let's go to the interface. I don't want this login. Let's go back to the out service. It is going to return false. Now we need to check if the password is correct or not. How? Using user manager dot check password async, and it is accepting identity user and the password, which is coming from the input user that I'm sending dot password. And because it is async, we need to return await. Let's see, it is telling me that it is a task. Exactly, I need to await here as well. Now I just logged in my user. Let's go back to the out controller. We have the result here. Let's get the result, var result equal, and then let's say if result equal true, which means if user is logged in successfully, return okay, and maybe something like done. Otherwise, return not okay, bad request. Yes. And now I know that I need to return action result. And maybe we don't need to have result here. Maybe we can just put it inside the if, just to be sure. Great, and we can change this one as well to task action result, and return an OK object. Fine. I need to give this method some specific roles. For example, here for the post, I'm going to use register with capital R. And for the get, I really want to use login. Fine. And let me change it a bit. For example, here I can say if model state dot is valid. If it is not, let's return a bad request. It is not a proper way to checking that. I'm just showing you how to do that. And here for the register, we are going to return a Boolean, and let's check it for the register. If user is registered correctly, just return OK and tell it successfully done. Otherwise, return bad request and tell something went wrong or something like that. Let's try it again and go to Swagger. I can see that for the post I have register. Let's register with a repetitive email address, which is test@gmail.com, and password is not important. Let's click on register. I can see that it is returning a response 400. Something went wrong. I know because the password, the username already exists. Let's change it to test1. And the password, let's select the password and execute it. And now it says successfully done. And for login, let's check if we can log in or not. Let's try it. test@gmail.com. And the password should be password. Great, and let's execute it. Okay, it is my fault. It is telling me that you are sending something inside the body, but you are using get method, which is not correct. We need to change it to HTTP post. Fine, it was a stupid mistake. Let's run it again. Go back to the Swagger. Press F5. Now both of them are post. And let's check how we can try it. test@gmail.com and the password. And execute. And see, it says done, which is everything is correct. But if I just add one number at the end of the password and execute it again, it will throw response status 400, bad request, something went wrong. It is correct. I know that I have a login system, I have a register system for the users. Now it is time to add authentication and authorization to our web API and use JSON Web Token to do this job for me. Imagine we have one more controller here, and let me just call it test controller. Create it for API, empty one, and call it test. And it is just going to return for HTTP post method, for HTTP get method, I'm going to create a really simple one, public async, and maybe even not async, public string get, and it is just going to return you hit me. We just want to be sure that this controller can or cannot be called when we are logged in or not. If I just run the application, go to the Swagger, refresh it, and run it, you hit me. Okay, fine. But what if we want this one to be available and visible just to authenticated users? Easily, you need to add authorize attributes on the class level, or maybe you can add it to the method level, and you need to go to the program.cs file and add app.use authentication. Be sure that always put use authentication before calling the authorization. But now if we run our application, we will face an error because we need to tell ASP.NET Engine to how to authenticate and authorize this code. First, let's tell builder.services.add_authentication, and it should have some options. Options, yes, and a semicolon at the end. For the options, we need to tell that what is the scheme for default authentication and for the challenges. For the default authentication scheme, I'm going to use JWT. We don't have it here. I'm going to use JWT barrier default. JWT barrier default. We need to install it. Let's go to the package management console. We need to specify the bearer that we want to use, and we are going to use JWT. Let's install the package first by typing JWT. I guess the first one, no, the third one is ASP.NET Core Authentication JWT bearer, and let's select the correct version. Fine, and go back to the code. I'm going to use JWT bearer defaults.authentication scheme. It is what I am going to use here, but we need to add another option here for challenges. Options dot default challenge scheme, I'm going to use exactly the same one, this JWT bearer default scheme here as well. And let's build it. Oh, it should be JWT. Fine, it is throwing an error because I have the code in the running mode, and let's try it again. Yeah, built successfully. Now we have configured authentication. It is time to configure our JSON Web Token to be our bearer. How? At the end of that, before the semicolon, I am going to add JWT JSON Web Token bearer, and we are going to add an option to it, and the option will have token validation parameters. Let's instantiate it. Oh, this one is a bit too long. Let's add the using, and this one is nicer like that. But we are going to check. We are going to validate our actor first, and we are going to say yes, validate the actor. Then we are going to validate the issuer. Yes. We need to validate the audience. Yes, by default, and it is the best practice that we are following. And we are we are checking the expiry, required expire time. True. We need to be sure that our token is not tempered. Then we need to validate the signature as well. Validate signing keys. True. And we can validate what we can validate. I guess it is enough. And we should tell that if we are going to check the issuer and audience, what are the valid issuers and audience? Valid issuer is equal something, I'm not sure what, and valid audience is equal something else. We have some variables here, we have some strings, but I'm going to read them from config. Let's go to the app setting.json. I'm going to create another section here for JWT. We need to pass a key. This key is the secret that all the encryptions is going to be based on that. Usually I use a GUID plus something else here. Just for the simplicity, I'm going to create a new GUID, copy it and paste it here, and remove the extra information that I don't like. Okay, for the issuer and audience, I'm going to check my launch application and copy the URL that we are using and paste them here and here. Great. Now I need to use builder.configuration.getSection. It was JWT, and then let me copy and paste it to be sure that it is not throwing an error in runtime. And the other one is for audience. Let me copy the audience and paste it here. Now we configured JSON Web Token to act as our bearer. Now we need to generate the token and give it to the client, and client should put it always in the header of the request, and JWT will validate it and let the request to be passed. Let me close everything. Let me save it and close it. Let's go to the controller and out controller. Here in the login, I'm going to check if the user can log in. I'm going to get the JSON Web Token string, where token string is equal out service dot generate token string based on my user. Let's generate it. Fine. And let's go to the services. I have it in the services, but it should be a string. And in the auth, it is going to start nagging that I'm not implementing a method. Let's implement this method as well. But how we are going to do that? The first thing that we need to create here is the token. How to create the token and return it. Let's create a token. A string, token string is equal JWT token handler dot write token. I should new it dot write token. And then I'm going to return this token string. But for generating the token, I need to pass some information to that. What is the information? Security token. I need to pass a security token to the JSON security token handler. Okay, let's call it security token and create a variable for that. I'm going to generate a local variable. Fine. And new it here, new security token. And let's see what should I pass to the security token. It says that, okay, it is an abstract class and you cannot instantiate out of that. Then let's try JWT security token. Fine, it is what I want. And let's check the parameters. It accepts header, payload, oh, a lot of things. Let me see. First, I want to pass claims. I'm going to create claims. Claims are some information that you can place inside your token. And how to do that? By just generating a list of claims. List of claims, yes. And here we can have new claim. And in the claim, we have the claim type. For example, here for claim type, we can have email. And for the email, it is the user email, which is the username. We can have another one. For example, it should be capital C. Yes, it should be capital C. Yes. And for the other one, we can pass the role. For example, here we want to say all users have admin role. Okay, it is the claims that we have. What else do we need here? In the configuration of JWT, we reset that we have issuer, audience, and expire date. Let's pass it. For example, expires. It is going to expire in 16 minutes. Then date time dot now dot add minutes 16 in an hour. And issuer, for the issuer, I need to get the configuration. Yeah, I will do it a bit later. For the audience, I need to get the configuration again. And what else? We are going to check the signing credential. Then we need to have a signing credentials as well. And the signing credential, the value that we want to have is signing credential. Okay, let's generate a local for this one for signing credentials. Fine, I'm going to implement this one. Let's go back to the constructor. Configuration, and let's call it config and create a field for this one. Go back here. We have config.getSection. Fine. And let's copy and paste it from here. Get section for issuer and get section for audience as well. Like that. And now the most important part. The signing credential is responsible to be sure that our JWT or JSON Web Token is not tempered on the client side by the client. How? By using a key and encrypt based on the key that we have. How? Let's see. New signing credential, and it accepts a security key and an algorithm. For the security key, let's just create security key. And for the algorithm we have, let's see, what algorithm do we have? Security algorithm. The suggestion is using HMA SHA 512 signature. Yeah. And for the security key, it should be a local again. Oops, this one is not something that I want. It should be the from the type security key. And new security key. And we cannot generate that because it is abstract. Okay, let's see what kind of security key do we have. Yes, symmetric security key. We need to have a symmetric security key, and let's change the variable type to var. And let's see, it needs to have a byte array and key. I have the key here and it should be key, but how to convert it to byte of arrays? Using encoding utf8.getBytes. Fine. And I guess we are fine to test our application. The reason that I didn't start from writing from top to bottom was that I cannot memorize everything. I just know that we have a JWT security token handler, which we need to write a token. And after that, I cannot memorize this. It tells me that it needs an input. I create the input, and for the input, I will check it and I will see that I need to create some other variables. I'm creating them, assigning value to them, and it is all I can memorize. Let's see, var, and we are returning a token, a string. Okay, let's see, we have the token and we are returning the token. Yes, to the auth controller. Let's see, we have this one, and user, what is the issue here? Auth service is null here. Why it is null? Because we need to open a curly bracket here, and we have the token string. Let's just pass it to the users like that. It is nasty, but just for the sake of this demo. And let's run the code, update the Swagger, try to execute it for the test. As you can see, it is an unauthorized error. Let's log in and see if we have the bearer or not. It is test@gmail.com, and the password should be password. Let's execute it. Wow, it is generating this token and returning it back to me. Let's copy it. Now we want to test our application. How can we test this one and this bearer? For Swagger, there are some extensions that you can authenticate using Swagger, but it is waste of time. I use Postman, and in the Postman, I'm just creating a GET request. Let me go to Swagger again. This is the place that I'm going to sending my request to. And we have authorization tab, and we need to select the type. Here is bearer token. And let's go back to the Swagger and copy our bearer and paste it here and send the request. And let's see, unauthorized. Why? Let me check it. Let's check it and see what is wrong here. Okay, in the auth service, where's my auth service? Yeah, in the auth service, we are doing everything correctly. We are generating the secure key, and we are passing the secure key here. And in the program.cs, okay, found it. We haven't told JWT bearer what is our key. Issuer signing key. And we need to pass it to the issuer signing key. We are going to tell it that it is a new, the type of key that we used there was a symmetry secure key. We need to use it here again. Instead of writing it, let's just copying it. It was symmetry security key. Yeah, let's copy it and paste it here. And we need to get the key from the configuration using key. Yeah, we forgot this part. We registered valid issuer, valid audience, but we forgot issuer signing key. What we are registering here in this configuration, we should have exactly here in the security token, because it is going to generate our token based on these specifications. Let me run it again. Go back to my Postman and send the request. Yes, you hit me, because the bearer is working. By changing the token, if I add just one at the end of that and send it, you see that it is unauthorized. Let me go back and send it again. Yes, we can hit that one. Okay, it was all I prepared for today's video. If you have any questions about JWT, the payload, identity, just let me know in the comments below. And do not forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel.